All right, welcome back to KM6LYW Radio, the show about amateur radio or ham radio, reimagining radio in the information age. Hey, let's talk about Raspberry Pis a little bit. Things have been changing a lot. The prices are going up. What's the future of single board computers? This time on KM6LYW Radio. There it is. All right, welcome back. Yeah, sometimes less is more when it comes to the guitar intros. All right, let's talk about Raspberry Pis. Which ones you should get and why, and where to get the best deals. All right, here's the Raspberry Pi lineup. Starting at the most expensive, we've got a Raspberry Pi 5, a 4. We've got two 3s. These are Raspberry Pi 3s, a 3A and a 3B plus. And we've got the 2 and the 0. I don't know what happened to one. It's just gone. Complete failure. Don't ask, don't tell. We don't know what happened to Raspberry Pi 1. There's a couple of these that are, in fact, useless. The original 2, this is the one that started it all. This is decades old now, okay? Garbage. We don't use it. Single core, hardly any RAM. The Raspberry Pi Zero, again, this came out about 10, 12 years ago. This one's also useless, but it was replaced by the Zero 2 wireless. Okay, this is the one you want, the 02 wireless. Notice it has that big silver chip. That's the difference. Okay, get the 02 wireless. The Zero, unfortunately, is trash. It just is for a variety of reasons. Let's line these up. So that leaves, this is our lineup here. The 5, the 4, 2 3s, and a 02 wireless. So there's a little socioeconomic political issue around Raspberry Pi. Back during COVID, you couldn't get a Raspberry Pi to save your life. And I think it really jaded the hobbyist industry. Maybe, probably so. You know, if you've got some cool projects you want to work on and you just can't share them because no one could get their hands on a Raspberry Pi at any price, even at, they were $18, but you still couldn't get one. The Raspberry Pi Foundation was still shipping them to their commercial and industrial customers, people making products with the Raspberry Pi. So I think there's a little bit of animosity there, and people are kind of branching out, looking at the Intel Nuke, Rock Pis, the Banana Pis. There's other single board computers out there, but none of them are Raspberry Pis. They're not, you can't run the exact same OS and firmware on them. So I still think Raspberry Pi has the mind share, but some people are starting to branch out. I don't have a problem with the Raspberry Pi at all. I still think it is the best value for hooking up a computer to your amateur radio. So fast forward to 2026, and we don't have COVID anymore, but now we have AI. It's having the same kind of impact, specifically on RAM, the memory chips. We just can't get our hands on them, and if you can, they're too expensive. They've gone up as much as 300%. In fact, Jeff Geerling here, this is his YouTube channel. I really love this graphic. RAM prices are killing the industry. Lenovo, Samsung, and we see Raspberry Pi here. So Raspberry Pi normally is really cheap, like an $18 to $80. That's what we were looking at over here on the table. They're almost double that now, and in fact, the prices went up twice in a couple of months, just because the RAM prices are so high. So the animosity is starting to come back a little bit. So we've seen the prices increased like a couple of months ago. Let's take the Pi 5 4 gigabyte. That's kind of a sweet spot. It went from $60 to $70 to $70. That's 10% increase. And then just last month, these are the Pis. Let's see, anything that has 4 gigabytes went up $15. Now the takeaway here is that any Raspberry Pi that has 1 gigabyte or less has not changed price. So we're only talking about the Pi 5 and the Pi 4 and anything that has more than 1 gigabyte. So the Raspberry Pi 3B plus, the 3A plus, those have 1 gigabyte. That's fine. They didn't change price at all. The Raspberry Pi 02 wireless is 512 megabytes. So you're going to say, Craig, well, I need as much memory as I can get for the performance. And I think that's a really common misconception. Just because you have more memory doesn't make it faster. If your application workload fits in the existing memory, it's all the same. And if you're swapping to slower media or stuff like that, yeah, more memory is going to help. But with things like a Digipi, which is an Internet of Things, kind of an appliance, we run one application at a time. And all of the apps on Digipi, FLDigi, FT8, Slow Scan Tele, they all fit in 512 megabytes. In fact, that's our budget for the project. So when people ask me what Pi they should buy, I say get the Raspberry Pi 02 wireless, at least for Digipi. Now, if you want to run a full-blown desktop with a web browser and a clock and a calendar and all that, yeah, you're going to need a few gigabytes of RAM, and yeah, you're going to have to pay the extra price because memory prices have actually tripled. But for Digipi, for really simple single board computers that are just running one thing at a time. The Raspberry Pi Zero 2 wireless is still my go-to. It is $18. Okay, let's see. Actually, the ones with you want the ones with the headers, so you can put the little screen on there. See, we got the little screen in the corner. Make sure you get the headers. That's $20. The Raspberry Pi Zero 2 wireless is $20. All right, and a couple of dollars for an SD card on top of that. Now, if you want to get the bigger Pis like the Pi 5, it's let's say we're still using the 4 GB one. It's $60. I got what did I get? An 8 GB one a while back. Maybe it was 16. But I paid $134. These are real prices for the Raspberry Pi 5 with 8 GB of RAM. The reason I bought that because I wanted, not for Digipi or radio, I just wanted it for a home NAS, for a home server. So if you've got a home server or something, yeah, you're going to have to pay for the extra RAM because you're going to need it. But for ham radio and Digipi, the budget is 512 megabytes. There's no performance penalty for that at all. All of these Raspberry Pis over here are multi-core. That's kind of the minimum. In fact, we're seeing the newer Pis, like the old 0 and the 2, didn't incorporate the new Neon instruction set. Those are the little microcode instructions that are in each CPU. So a lot of the programs were compiled with those instructions, and they won't even run on those older Pis that I said were trash. So yeah, don't even try and get those running on newer operating systems because all the new Pis, the multi-core Pis, have the Neon instruction set. You're going to see different prices out there from authorized retailers and Amazon, okay? The people on Amazon aren't authorized retailers, but they're usually bundling cool stuff with it. So I'm not saying don't buy them on Amazon, but if you need a bunch of cables and adapters and HDMI cords and things, they will bundle them. You're going to pay a little more, of course, but you get everything in one package. If you go to rpilocator.com, you're going to see the authorized dealers here. And I'm just showing the Pi 5 and the Zero 2 wireless. This is a really cool site where you can select your region and the type of device you're interested in, where you can buy it, and if there's stock. This was a big deal during COVID, right? But it's important today to see how the prices are reacting here with increased RAM prices. So that's my opinion on Raspberry Pi and where the industry is headed with the single board computers and system on a chip SoCs. I'm actually using an x86 PC to make this video. They're not going away, but for Internet of Things, internet-based stuff, I think the single board computers are still large and in charge and have a lot of legs left. In fact, I think they're the future. Hey guys, thanks for hanging out with me. I'm not going to scroll all the patrons here, but I'm going to do a patron highlight or spotlight. We've got N1TI, Tim, rocking it. He sent me an email and says, hey man, I'm using Digipi, one of these Raspberry Pis with the Digipi software that'll let you operate your radio with a web browser from anywhere, including your easy chairs. But like a lot of hams our age, and our age group is a little older than most, we're in infusion chairs, right? We're getting to that point. So he's got his Raspberry Pi hooked up over, looks like a VPN here. So not only can he operate digital modes, FT8, JS8 call, all of that using a web browser, using Digipi attached to his radio from his home recliner, but he can also do it from the infusion center, right? So if you're sitting there all day getting an infusion, and assuming the Benadryl hasn't knocked you completely out, you can still operate radio. They think you're just browsing the web, but you're actually operating your radio at home using the Digipi web interface that's connected to your radio. So this is Tim. He's doing a great job here. Thanks for the note, Tim. I really appreciate it. This means a lot to me to see how you guys are actually using this software, using this environment, making amateur radio data modes more accessible. This is such a great example of making data modes more accessible and communicating. You can be anywhere in the world, but yet still be using your radio at home, chatting, texting, doing FT8, JS8 call. Tim, thank you for the email. I really do appreciate it. All right, and so for those of you, I know I mentioned Digipi a million times. Digipi.org is the place to go. This is kind of like the lab materials for this YouTube channel. This goes to patrons. Anything in the Patreon bucket at patreon.com/KM6LYW gets you access to the SD card, and then you put it in one of these Raspberry Pis and you hook it up and you start operating. In fact, you can see it over here. It's been operating the whole time we've been talking, doing APRS stuff, and we've got an APRS chat interface, all the modes you can think of here. So digipi.org. Tons of fun to get your Digipi SD card image for patrons of the channel. All right, guys. Hey, thanks for hanging out with me. Let me know your opinions on the future of single board computing or system on a chip architectures. I'm still with it with Raspberry Pi. I'm perfectly okay with that, despite the increases in prices for anything over 1 GB. But I'll be honest, I don't use anything over 1 GB. So I think Raspberry Pi is still priced right on. Guys, my name is Craig, amateur radio call sign KM6LYW. I'm in California, and I'm clear.